Good afternoon, everyone. It's June Rawl here from IPDAE, welcoming all of you to IPDAE's webinar Wednesday. Today's webinar, Engaging Adult Education Through IET-Centered Instruction, will be facilitated by Ron Cruz. And today, what Ron is going to do is provide you more resources, additional resources that you can use as you build out and expand your IET programs. Before we get started, Ron, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping rules. As you know, you're all muted and you're in listen-only mode. The recorded version will be available within 48 hours of the webinar, and you can type in any questions that you want. Ron and I will be monitoring that Q&A option to see if we can address any of your questions or concerns or anything that you may have regarding your expansion and delivery of your fantastic IET programs that you're all working so hard to do. So Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you and we will get started on this webinar. Thank you again for attending, everyone.
Thank you so much, June. I appreciate the introduction and setting up the tone. That's what we're going to cover today. The purpose of this webinar is follow-up to the regional workshops we conducted throughout the state. And if you have not had the opportunity to attend those in-person regional workshops, stick around because you're going to get a lot of information about integrated education and training that you can still use, whether or not you attended the in-person regional workshops. What I'm going to cover today are a few little things, just a brief overview. By now, we should already understand what IET is, but I'm going to still provide some new people with a brief overview of that. And then we're going to dive into contextualizing instruction and fill in the gaps and reinforce there why contextualization is so critical in implementation of your IET. Then we're going to dive into the independent career clusters and how you can start branching out and blending your instruction and infusing some careers into your daily instruction and strengthening that infusion with some type of alignment. Towards the end, I'm just going to do a quick review of how do we really develop a solid contextualized task using the tool that we've introduced to the people that attended the regional workshop, which is the GRASS concept wheel. We'll top it off with just a few reminders with regards to single set of learning objectives and where to find, where do you start and where do you go from here. We're going to bombard you with lots and lots of IPDAE resources so that you have all the information you need at your fingertips to make your IET implementation a big success. Without further ado, let's just dive into a brief overview of integrated education and training. As you all know, integrated education and training is a type of service delivery which combines three components. One of which, actually two of which, we already do in the classroom. And you know, if you're a teacher, you're following the curricular frameworks for adult education, you're already working with two of the big components of IET. First component is really the core of what you do is adult education and literacy. Whether you are a literacy teacher or an adult ESOL instructor, or in an ABE/GED prep class, you are already implementing a component of integrated education and training. Also included in our curricular frameworks are the workforce preparation activities that we're supposed to embed as we teach the academic skills. We're supposed to be embedding some of this workplace preparation activities. As you may, probably don't have to reiterate with digital literacy, critical thinking, those employability skills that's super critical for our students, especially when they're seeking for employment. Last but not the least, and the third component of IET is that workforce training component. Us blending in and supporting that workforce training component where the student is co-enrolled or concurrently taking a workforce training program that would earn them a credential of value, something that they can take with them, show to the employer and give them an edge, or prove to the employer that they have the skills necessary to perform the job. So these are the three components of IET. Within an IET classroom, all these three things have to play a role, and they all have to function together and work collaboratively together through what we call single set of learning objectives. So whether or not you're an IET teacher or you will still benefit from the information that we've provided in the regional workshop or in this webinar, because IET is built upon the principles of Andragogy. So let's just quickly and briefly go over some of those principles of Andragogy. So Andragogy, as we all know, is the study of adult learning. So in an adult education world, adults need to know the reason why. They always need to know why. And I'm sure you've been listening or hearing a lot of your students ask questions, you certain times, why do we have to learn this? And how is this important? And how is this going to help me in real life or with my future career goals? Another important aspect of Andragogy is experience. So a lot of our students, as compared to young children, adult learners already come with a ton of experience, which actually influence the way they learn. So we need to capitalize that experience and use that to catapult further knowledge for our adult students. They also come with us with a certain self-concept. So that means that they know that they are adults, and they know that they are the ones that are responsible for whatever comes out of their adult education or their participation in adult education. They need to be responsible for their learning decisions, and they thrive so much when you provide them with options and choices within the classroom. Also, another aspect of Andragogy is that adults learn best, okay, when what we're teaching them has some type of application to a real world or to the workplace. You know, when you're doing activities in class where they're working on solving a problem or working and helping them become more employable or become more productive in their workplace, that's really hitting the core of their learning concept. The next one is problem orientation. So in this case, adult students, different from younger children, they don't want to learn some type of generic content that are just whatever is what they read or what they see. They wanted to see that the content that they're learning in your classroom has some type of solution or application to the real world, okay? So the abilities, if as you sharpen their abilities to solve problems, that would be really powerful with your adult students. Last but not the least, adult students do not need candies or stars or awards in order to be motivated. They come in with some type of intrinsic motivation. Adult students, where you're able to capture their attention and engage in classroom instruction and really address their academic needs, are those adults that will continually come to your class. And in the flip side, if you are not making the adult students feel belonging into your class, or you're not really hitting the core of their academic needs, then they will also, and they can make that decision to stop coming to class. So intrinsic motivation is another principle of andragogy that we all need to learn. With that IET hits the core of all 6 of these, because what it does is it provides the immediate application of the academic skills, knowledge, and content that you're introducing to your students in each of these aspects. No longer will you have to ask or hear your students, why do we need to learn this? Because they will immediately realize that, hey, you're teaching them measurement in class is helping them become good welders, good carpenters, helping them become a better nurse, helping them to become a better office worker. The experiences and the problem-solving experiences that you introduce to your class will become so much more engaging and powerful, because they are the same experiences and problem scenarios that they're experiencing at work or in the in the technical world setting, where they're learning maybe how to become a nail technician or a carpenter or a woodworker. Self-concept, their readiness, all of these 6 components are really hit strong when you're implementing an IET approach to service delivery. There are 4 different models of implementing IET in the classroom, and we're just going to quickly go over these 4. They are what we call fully integrated instruction, partially integrated instruction, one instructor model, and the employer community partner. So those 4 are all very different from each other. Fully integrated instruction is where you have both instructors, meaning your CTE instructor and then your adult education instructor, teaching at the same time. In one of our previous webinars, we talk about the various co-teach models for fully integrated instruction. If you had not had the chance to participate or view that, I would really strongly suggest that you go back and look into the archived webinars in Florida IPDAE website, because we have given fully integrated instructors a ton of resources and different modalities that they can work with one another. Partially integrated instruction is where instruction is happening in 2 different times and in 2 different settings. So this is where they attend separately their CTE classes and their adult education classes. Most of Florida's IET programs are partially integrated models. The next model is the one instructor model. If you are fortunate enough to be a school or a class that has an instructor that is both certified in a career technical program and in adult education, then that one instructor model is for you. That case, you are functioning and both working and helping the students make some advancements in their basic skills, and at the same time working with them to learn their technical skills and pass their licensure exams. Last but not the least is the employer and community partner model. These are the models where part of the instruction is happening and it's being monitored, controlled, or moderated by an employer, let's say Toyota, Amazon, or you name it, a hospital, a local hospital. So the employer is in charge of providing, let's say, technical training to the students, and the adult educator or the adult education side is working with that employer to provide supplemental adult education training or basic skills training for the students that are currently in that technical training program. I also wanted to mention that not only employers are providing technical training, there are a ton of community business organizations, faith-based organizations, charitable organizations that are providing technical training most of the time free of charge out of donations. And you can also partner with these institutions to develop an IET model where they provide the technical training and you provide the basic skills training for the students. So now that we've learned all the different models of IET implementation, here's what I'm going to tell you, that integrated education and training is more than just organized co-enrollment. So it's not like, okay, well, we have one student, we'll enroll them in welding, and then we'll enroll them in ESOL at night or a GED prep at night, right? So they go to welding in the morning and then they go to ESOL at night. So done, IET, right? No, that is not how IET is supposed to work. There's certain requirements for IET to work, and there's a big difference between IET and just dual enrollment. And I'm going to go over those criteria in a minute. But really and truly, the potential for IET is manifest, and the biggest difference in an IET is what's happening inside the adult education classroom. Okay, we cannot control what happens on the CTE side, but we can definitely control what's happening in the adult education classroom. What you do with your students in that class and how you structure your lessons, your classroom activities to support their learning in the technical program makes all the difference. Because in an integrated education and training program, you're not downgrading adult education. Adult education and career technical education are all of sufficient and equal intensity and quality. Okay, so they cannot go into, let's say, technical program for 5 days a week, whereas they only attend adult education for 1 day a week. So there has to be some type of sufficient or equalizing or balancing intensity and quality between the two. They have to occur simultaneously. So they cannot take CTE in the first semester and then take ESOL or GED prep on the second semester. They all have to begin and happen at the same time. Both instructors, most importantly, the adult education instructor, must be using materials that are occupationally relevant. So meaning, for example, if let's say we're working with a certified nursing assistant program in an IET, your instructional materials as an adult educator must help and must use occupationally relevant materials such as, tables, data, charts, reading materials, articles, diagram, pictures, situation, problems that are within the work of a certified nursing assistant. Now, of course, you can blend in all the other things around, in other areas or fields, but the main core of your instruction should focus on what's occupationally relevant for your students. If you follow the single set of learning objectives, you will be in sync with the CTE instructor. So for every integrated education and training program that the state has approved, has its own single set of learning objectives developed by your own district or college. So look for this single set of learning objective if you're an IET instructor, because that will spell out really the bottom line of what you're supposed to be teaching and how you're supposed to be teaching them. Where do you get the materials and what types of assessments are available for your students in the IET program? Last but not the least, it has to be a part of a career pathway. Certain integrated education and training programs are not sufficient for gainful employment. So some IET programs require to be stacked in order to become more marketable in the workplace, or in order to earn enough to support a family. Nowadays, average rent in Florida, oh my God, we don't know how much that is now, how much it went up from what it was 3 years ago. So a lot of our students are now having to work 2 or even 3 jobs and balance that with coming to school in order to support a family. Well, we don't want it to be that way. We want not just a job for the student, we want them to have the job. But certain types of the jobs require a certain number of skill set and credentials. So that's what we're trying to do in an IET, is to make sure that whatever we're offering in an IET program should allow the student to pursue a certain career pathway. Now, here are some examples of those occupationally relevant materials that you should be using in a classroom. Now, take a look at these things, and you're probably already using some of these in your class at some point in time, right? Like conversion tables or charts for volumes in the math class, or filling out forms in the ESOL classroom, right? Understanding symbols and diagrams and tables and charts in both ABE and adult ESOL programs, pictures of different tools and, in different fields or careers. These materials are already within your disposal. And if not, they're within reach, because a lot of these materials that I'm posting right now are readily available online that you can download and print for yourself and use in your classroom. So what we ask in an integrated education and training program is that you use occupationally relevant instructional materials, not just any occupation, but the occupation that your students are pursuing in the IET program. So here's an example of what I'm talking about when I said look for that single set of learning objectives from your administrators or directors who submitted your IET programs. Single set of learning objectives has a set of objectives that you should be targeting in your weekly or daily instruction. It provides you with the spelling out of all the standards between the CTE program and the adult education program, including the workforce preparation activities you should be embedding within your instruction. It has resources and activities, links to web pages, to videos, to charts, sample diagrams, just readings and things like that, or just example activities you can do in class. Those are the types of things that's really going to help you really do a good job in hitting hard those critical academic skills that would support your students concurrently taking a technical program. So integrated education and training is so powerful because it just accelerates the achievement of this goal of our students. So talk about rapid credentialing, right? So the integrated education and training was developed because the jobs that our students need, they needed it yesterday. So we need to get them to a job, get them the credentials they need to get to land that job yesterday. So that means we have to accelerate and speed up that process. So instead of going into adult ed and then taking a CTE program after that, we're trying to hit 2 birds with 1 stone in an integrated education and training without depleting or diminishing the quality of instruction between the two. So contextualized instruction is going to be the main instructional delivery model that you're going to have to use in an IET classroom. Contextualized instruction, put shortly, is just putting into context the academic skills that you're teaching to your students, but in the context of the occupation, specific occupation that your students are trying to pursue. So why do we need to contextualize? Well, tell me type it into the chat. Why do you think contextualizing instruction, whether or not you're an IET teacher, do you think contextualization is important? Okay. I've already reiterated it earlier that this is how adult learners learn. But let me provide you with some of the relevant research that that solidifies the idea of why contextualization is powerful and yields benefits for our students. They learn better because they make contextualization more relevant. It means more than just a set of knowledge that are disjoint to our students. It engages and motivates those hard to reach students. Once you start tapping on their interest, their career goal, you start lighting up those bulbs in the minds of your students, and you spark some level of engagement with them. You feel the difference as an instructor. It also increases their level of confidence and enthusiasm. They have to. If I want to be a nurse, I need to be well versed in medical terminology. So when my instructor is teaching me some very critical basic medical terminology, I need to be paying attention. And in return, you're building the confidence of that student, and that student is gaining more enthusiasm to the content that you are presenting. It also enhances some type of long-term gain in what you're offering your students, right? Rather than just, okay, we're going to do equations today. Okay, so you hear sadness creeping into the room, right? They're not enthusiastic. But when you talk about, okay, well, we're going to learn how carpenters use equations to design a door frame. Okay, we are going to use linear equations to predict certain things in the line of work. So those types of things makes that, oh, we're going to learn, we're going to learn equations, makes it more interesting, and makes the students want to learn more because they know already off the bat a long-term use of that knowledge. Here are some other important evidence of why contextualization is so powerful and yields higher level of performance from our students. According to research, if you are contextualizing instruction, your students are, you're promoting persistence within the students, because that contextualized, based on this research, students given contextualized instruction are more likely to persist, meaning they're more likely to come to class every day. If you're doing activities that pertain or support their learning in the technical program or career that they're trying to pursue. Let's say tomorrow, okay, instead of just reading articles or reading charts and diagrams, we are going to look at different layouts of websites and talk about which websites are most visited, based on their layout, to help my students who are working towards web development or web design. Progression is also very evident. Students in a contextualized, or students where their teacher is contextualizing instruction, progressed faster than students in a traditional type of instruction. Students, there's higher level, based on research, there's higher level of motivation, and reduce the attrition, or students dropping off the class, or students just plain absenteeism in the classroom is reduced just by continually contextualizing to your students' career goals. And then last but not the least, based on research, there are some level of change, a positive change in engagement, especially for those hard to reach students. Student success, here are just some data that I've gathered to exemplify why contextualization is so powerful. It yields results. Students are 3 times likely to pass, 4 times more likely to pass a degree, 4 times more likely to pass or pass on to transfer that work and knowledge that they've learned into the next work. So with that said, I would just wanted to say that we need to continually, whether you're doing IET or not, contextualizing instruction to career goals of your student is just good practice. If you don't want to, hear it from me, hear it from some of these theoretical educational theorists that promoted and supported contextualizing instruction. Motivation theory, problem-centered learning, social learning theory, learning style, and brain research all support or complement contextualized instruction. Now, if you're just starting to contextualize instruction, I would suggest you apply REACT. REACT is the acronym that I try to use. These are the different ways you can contextualize to your students' career goals. First is relating, which is like linking that concept that you're teaching to something that they already know, okay? Something that they already know or something that they wanted to pursue. Experiencing, doing some hands-on activities with your students to discover new knowledge within the field of their interests. The next one is applying. A for applying is then allow your students to apply the knowledge to real-world situations or situations within the workplace. So let's say, for example, you taught them fractions. Well, do some activities or explain to the student how fractions would apply to, let's say, carpentry or culinary arts or medical fields. The next letter is C, cooperating. Allow students to work as a team, solve problems, develop that collaborative skills. As you know, as soon as you start building and promoting team, working in teams or cooperative learning in your class, the better they're going to be able to function in the workplace, because rarely would students work by themselves in their chosen line of work. Last but not the least is transferring. Transferring is the process where students take what they learned and apply it to whole new situations and contexts. So let's say, for example, you learned about adjectives today, then you can have your students apply the use of adjectives, let's say, when responding to an email with a coworker or a colleague or even a supervisor. So I'm going to pause right here and look at some of the questions and comments that you guys have. June, do we have any particular questions that we need to address? And I'm going to look at this.
I don't see any questions, Ron.
Perfect. Thank you so much. But I see some good feedback there. Thank you. Keep those comments coming. All right, so here are some of the, okay, we already went over that. So there are 2 different ways where you can infuse career-based or contextualized instruction in your class. So if you just wanted to, if you're not an IET instructor, but you wanted to do what's best for your students and contextualize to various careers, because it could be that you're not an IET teacher and then you're in a class with different students with different career goals. Like they want, some of them want to be in the medical field, others would like to be in the others would like to be in the let's say in the construction industry or manufacturing industry. It's hard to balance content. So in that case, you only wanted to do some type of career infused type of classroom instruction. Now, if you are an IET instructor and you've been identified by your school or your district as an IET instructor, you should be implementing some type of career focus. So you're no longer catering to every type of career, you're only focusing on one career. Let's say it's CNA. Now, for those of you that are non-IET instructors, career infused are the way to go. You don't have to, you can infuse your instruction with a lot of employment information in various fields. So maybe this week you can do construction, and then next week you can do business, and the week after that is health science careers. So you don't have to feel the pressure of sticking to one career unless you've done the homework and you've realized that majority of your students want to pursue one particular career choice. So, but for all of our IET programs out there, most of your students, or all of your students actually, will be focusing on one particular career or credential. And for those of you who do not know that there are 17, Florida has recognized 17 different career clusters. Gathered these career clusters from the Department of Education website. So just for your information to know, just so if you are implementing, let's say, a career infused instruction, you can skip around between these different career clusters, right? And there are a ton of resources and materials online that you can grab pertaining to each particular career, including lesson plans, even curriculum or syllabus materials for helping prepare students in various career clusters. During the workshop, we provided all of our participants with a lesson plan template. And not only that, we also had the opportunity and allowed the opportunity for each participant to develop their own lesson plan. So that is part of your packet that you can download from the webinar page. We've had the opportunity to fill that out. We did some alignment work where we specified what reading, language, mathematics, standards, concepts, and skills are being addressed, and then align them with the career technical concepts or competencies that their students are learning in the CTE program, and then match it with the workforce preparation activity. So here's just an example of how that looks. And we checked off certain things over there. How do we develop a solid contextualized activity? So this is where a lot of our participants had a lot of fun and really saw a lot of value in the regional workshop, is when we ask them to develop their own activity that is fully contextualized. But we gave them some parameters on how to develop a contextualized task and activity. And as a parameter, we introduced them to what we call the GRASP's concept wheel. So the GRASP concept wheel is just a set, it's just a template that has 6 parameters that you have to meet or to have in order to create or develop a solid contextual task, okay? So, you can do a contextualized instruction by teaching within a context, but it's even more powerful when you do activities with students in a particular context that aligns to their career choice. So this is one template that we found that would work well when developing a contextualized task. It has 6 components. We have the goal, the role, the audience, the situation, the product, and the standards. So it's important that you have all 6 components filled in for your contextualized task before even asking the student to perform the activity. And as you can see from this GRASP wheel, that there are slices or sectors where it has a place for you to write results. Because at every point in the way, you wanted to have some type of record of what the result is. What is the result, or what was the reaction from the student when you identified the goal of your task? What was the result when you explained to the student, this is going to be your role for your task? So you wanted to record the result, or you wanted to set the expectation. So you also wanted to, there's a space for that in the template. This template is included in your downloadable worksheet. So here are some examples of contextualized tasks that we introduced during the workshop. So in this case, the contextualize, we're trying to contextualize to culinary arts, and we're working with some ABE math concepts. So the goal of the activity of the contextual task is, let's say, convert a basic recipe to serve 100 people and to calculate the total cost of the recipe, of preparing that recipe. So that's kind of like what my goal is, right? So now this is exactly what I want my students to be doing and applying, because once they become a chef or a cook or a food server, they need to know some of these things in order to either launch their own business or work for a restaurant. So now I would want to identify, okay, what role do I want my students to play in this activity? I want them to play as the chef, okay? And then who is the audience? So if they are the chef, who's going to get or receive, are they going to give the recipe and the calculation of the total cost? And that would be the audience. And in this case, the audience for their product is the customer, okay? So now that I've identified who the customer is, I'm going to explain to them what situation they're in, so the student have a full big picture view of what's happening, so they really understand why they're performing a particular task and why they're performing a particular role. So in this case, we outlined that the situation is that they are planning for a catering event. So because they are planning for a catering event, or in relation to that planning of the catering event, they have to serve 100 people, but they have to have some type of calculation or estimate on how much the cost of supplies and materials they're going to need in order to host or to cater that event. And they have to really either put into paper or fill out a form in order to give that document to the customer, so that the customer understands what are the expectations for the catering. So really, that's the product that I am referring to, is a detailed quote with some writing or text or explanation explaining what would be the cost to serve 100 people and how you came up with that cost. And last but not the least, what are my standards? How would I see, or how will I evaluate a successful product from the student? Okay, so as an instructor, I will be looking at that detailed quote that they're going to be providing to the customer, and I'm going to look out for a lot of the ABE math skills that I'm trying to reinforce. I wanted to see proper measurement labels, right? Or unit labels. I want the quote to be as detailed as possible and as complete as possible. I don't want them to not charge for oil or for gas in the trip. So we wanted to add those operational costs in there as well. Last but not the least, I wanted to make sure that their computations or their calculations are correct. So the mathematics, the additions, the subtractions, whatever discounts they want to provide is there. Now, everything else that the student decides they wanted to do to make the experience more powerful and to make the customer more at ease or more inclined to do business with them, that's on their own, and that's probably going to be like extra credit or for a little, a star at the end of the activity. But this is the basic things that I'm going to be looking out for. So now, if I present this to the students with all of the components complete, the students will have a big picture of what is expected, and they know how you're going to measure success throughout the process. So this is a simple grasp contextualized task wheel that we've developed during the workshops. And we've got additional ones for your reference that I included into the PowerPoint. Very similar to that, but it's in a different career field or occupation. This one is on for entrepreneurship. Okay. And during the workshop, we also did some alignment process. So it would be really nice is as you're developing your contextual task to have that single set of learning outcomes side by side so that you know exactly how you wanted to do, what type of activity you wanted to do with your students. A blank template of the GRASP's contextual task is also included in the workbook for this webinar. So make sure that you visit that webinar page again and download the webinar handouts and materials, the workbook, so that you can grab yourself your own copy of the contextual task, the GRASP contextual wheel. All right, so we're now on the home stretch. So remember, I've been saying this throughout that single set of learning objectives is really what's going to drive the success and direction of your daily instruction. So please do not undermine the importance of the single set of learning objective. It's not there to collect dusts, or it's there to submit to DOE. Single set of learning objectives are actually developed for you as an instructor. And if you feel like the single set of learning objective does not quite meet your expectation or what's happening in the classroom, feel free to revise the single set of learning objectives to how you feel would best fit the activities that you're doing in class. The bottom line is you are the master of instruction in your classroom, and you know what's best for your students. So here is just an example of a single set of learning outcomes that aligns to the contextual task for entrepreneurship in the ABE language arts classroom. Single set of learning objectives, just that. They allow you to understand how the career technical training, the adult basic skills education competencies, and the workplace preparation activities all play a role. So you see all three components of IET in play in a singular activity. So where do you go from here? So here are just some ideas on where you can start into gathering materials for career-infused or career-focused instruction. You can look at career pathways materials. We've got faculty meetings or collaborations. Just tap on your another teacher in your technical college and say, hey, can we sit down? I'd like to, most of my students like to pursue your technical program. Can you give me some materials or pointers? Gather information from them and maybe even schedule a time where you can do a quick interview or conversation with them. Look at your employers around your community. See where you can partner. Usually, especially in smaller counties or districts, sometimes there's not a lot of variety of employers that you can work with. So you have 1, 2, or 3 employers that are major employers within your district. Partner with them because they're ultimately going to be the ones who's going to be hiring the students in your class. Look at the materials on the web, but be sure to check with your CTE instructors whether that web information is accurate or relevant to the course they're teaching. Now, how do you know when a particular content is essential? Again, check with your CTE instructor. Look at the tests. A lot of the information for licensure exam and outline for those exams are available online, such as the nursing exam or the nursing board, the CNA exam. Those are all there available that you can see. Ask for employers again. Ask a former student that have already moved on to that training, or a former student that you have and came back and thank you for all the hard work you provided to make them achieve, and ask them, hey, can you come to my class and talk about your learning and your journey towards becoming a registered nurse? or ask students to identify any problems that they may be having in the workplace and maybe build those issues, concerns, or situation into your daily classroom activities. An interview guide for an instructor, if you want to do an interview with your CT instructor, an interview guide is included in your workbook materials. In addition to those, a lot of support materials and resources are available and downloadable from the IPDAE website. If you guys go into the AE toolbox, you can go into the Adult Education Curriculum Matrix, and you can download ready-made study guide, lesson plans, call it as you may. We call them resource activities because they're just so versatile that we've developed for particular careers. So this one that we've developed is aligned to culinary arts or hospitality industry. So gives them activities and even some worksheets and reading and even problem solving situations pertaining to a particular career. More information on IET, you can head on to the IPDAE portal, and we have an IET overview self-paced e-training. So you want to learn more about IET, become more well-versed, and you're really interested in it, you already have that information at your fingertips. All you got to do is log into your IPDAE portal and go into the e-training catalog. All of these templates that I've shown you today is available on your workbook that you can download. I also want to point your direction to the Adult Education Career Pathways channel of the IPDAE website. We have developed several single set of learning outcomes. Well, not we, but several counties that we work with and schools and colleges that we've worked with have already developed some really fantastic single set of learning outcomes with resources, assessments, and materials ready for you to use in various different careers. Take a peek at those, see if those are one of the integrated education and training programs you're implementing, and download and use them in your classroom. I also wanted to let you know that on May 4 and 5th, IPDAE is conducting their Career Pathways Institute in Orlando. More information on that, check your email or your correspondence from Florida IPDAE. Community is a practice are all still in play, and additional resources. We're kind of like developing more IET resources as we go. So keep checking that AECP channel on the IPDAE website, because you never know what will come up next and help support your instruction. I know that we're all thinking about CASAs and TABE. That's really what's driving our work on a daily basis. And here's what I'm going to tell you. All right. So we're not asking you to divert between, if you're an IET instructor, we don't want you to turn your back on standardized assessment and just do IET, right? No, it's not. It's really reinforcing what you're teaching. You're still teaching a lot of the life and work competencies that are being tested on the CASAS test, whether it's CASAS goals or CASAS listening and reading series. Because if you look, the standards are clumped together into major components such as communication, resources, health, employment, government, and law, a lot of which are already embedded in workplace preparation activities. So for, again, to reiterate that, not just vocabulary, but informal discourse and strategic and critical thinking, which is very essential to the workplace, is being assessed on the CASAS test. Okay, so text and format, reference materials, reading materials, and thinking skills, and academic or informational content is already embedded in the CASAS test. So you're not doing anything different. You're just being more selective on the types of materials that you're using to propel the content that you're supposed to address. So bottom line, if you teach and implement IET in full fidelity, the test is going to take care of itself because you're not covering or forgetting to cover some of this. In fact, you're actually going to overcover some of these particular pieces of information because science, forms, charts, articles, measurement, scales, diagram, that is all, that's where the workplace is, you know? So expect some good results in your IET program. And the same is true for the TABE and GED. If you're an ABE GED teacher, we've developed a matrix for you guys that you guys can use between various, that lays out the different math, reading, and language competencies across the levels. And you can easily map out or highlight some of those academic skills that are very critical to a particular career. A lot of the TABE and GED questions are real life or workplace based questions. So all I'm going to say is that do what you're doing, continue and empower your students by contextualizing instruction. And these 3 tests is going to take care of itself. All right, so if there are any questions, feel free to type it into the chat, but I'm going to turn it over to June right now for our evaluation.
Thank you, Ron, so much. So always we like to hear your feedback. You'll see 3 short questions that appear on your screen right now. If you could take a moment to answer those questions, we would love to hear how you felt about the webinar today. While you do that, I want to remind you of next week's webinar, which will be conducted on March 9th, is really focused on our friends who are serving in correctional facilities. So we're going to hone in on IET-centered implementation instruction, specifically for those who are serving in the correctional facilities. And for all of you out there who are serving in correctional facilities, look to the IPDAE event calendar because Ron and I are going to be coming out to see you around the state in the months of March and April. So we look forward to connecting with you then. Until then, I wish all of you a rest of a beautiful day and please stay safe and we'll see you next week. Thank you.